The D Word Podcast, Episode 3. Welcome. Right. Welcome. The name is Deon, and I'm a radio host. I'm also an MC. I'm a car reviewer. But on this podcast series, I get to share with you some of the things that I think is relevant to you and your world. Sometimes whenever I do these podcasts, I always look back and say, if I were to teach a younger version of myself something that I've learned, what would it be? Well, that's what my podcast series is all about, sharing information with you. And hopefully, if you have an open mind, you can take away something that can be useful for you. Now, episode 2 of the D Word Podcast was built on my career being a radio host and the misconceptions that people have about being a radio host. But episode 3 was tips on planning your wedding. And I have been asked this question so many times, and I felt that I needed to give you some tips, especially if you're planning a wedding. What are some of the things you need to do, and how can you save money? Because we all want to save money on your big day, but you also don't want cheap. You want quality. And there's a lot of things that people get wrong when it comes to planning a wedding. They want the cheap this, cheap that, cheap this. So try and look for affordable at a good price rather than just saying cheap, and also educate yourself on the service providers you want at your wedding. So let's go through the 6 points that I think would be useful for you while planning your wedding. Number 1 is do research. If you are not doing research on the things that are important to you and your partner at your wedding, try and put a list together of what is important. So I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we got married in 2017 in Bali. We didn't know what the vendors were like in Bali. So we appointed a wedding planner, and the wedding planner did some homework for us. So the wedding planner has a fee. You can't negotiate that fee, by the way. That's just the way it is. And when they give you their fee, they basically give you a whole lot of service providers who do decor, a whole lot of service providers who do the food, lighting, entertainment, stuff like that. So if we didn't have a wedding planner, we pretty much would be screwed in our research, because research is important in a wedding. If you want a quality, for example, quality decor, you need to go look around, figure out what styles are in trend, what is important. Decor is just decor to some people. And for some people, decor that is flashy is important to them. So do research on all the different things that are important to you and your partner. And once you have the research done, then figure out what is the allocated budget per vendor or per service provider. You can't put a figure out there that is oblique. So let me give you an example. If you say, no, Deon, I only have 100,000 Rand to get married. Now, let me just paint this to you. Sometimes a venue would be 20,000 Rand alone, 30,000 Rand. Then if you want photographer, videographer, that could be 30,000 Rand, depending if you want the cheap ones or the quality ones. And it'll go way past 100 grand. And I haven't even touched any of the other fancy stuff yet. So don't think what you think is affordable is what the actual quality will cost. That's a misconception that a lot of people have. A lot of people say, no, this is all I have. This is what it is. Now, if you researched what you wanted at your wedding, let's look at an example, right? Let's look at a simple one. Number 1, venue. Number 2, decor. Number 3, video photography, right? Those 3 things were important to you. So when you're doing your research, try and speak to many people who do decor, many people who do video photography, and figure out what is the cheap price and what is the expensive price and what you can afford. That's the one way I could paint it out to you. I've done that as well. I always tell people, hey, do research, figure out what you want. The best decor people are not cheap. I'll be honest with you, and we've learned that. But if you want something, for example, if you look at my wedding video on YouTube, we wanted a particular arch. And we didn't go to the people and say, this is all we have. We had to abide by what they told us the price would be, because that's their service, that's their product. So educate yourself on the items you want, then set a budget accordingly. Now, remember, there's some boundaries when it comes to getting married. If you're getting married and somebody else is paying for your wedding, then they're going to dictate what they want at your wedding. So if you want to have some independence, save towards your own wedding and dictate what you want. But of course, that's something that not all of us can digest. But if you can, that's great. It's the year 2023. People have more different weddings than what it was 20 years ago. And every time I MC a wedding, I see weddings are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that is one way you can save money. And that is a side tip. If you get less people at your wedding, you can save more money with that and put it in other things. So if you want to cut corners at your wedding, cut the guest list down. That's the best place where you can save money. So do your research, set your budget for each thing that you want. And just remember, whatever you budget on something may not necessarily be what the final figure is. Unless you are very frugal in how you spend, then obviously what your budget is, you'll sit and abide by. But of course, if you as a couple are simple, then obviously your budget will be smaller and it may work. But if you have expensive taste, then obviously your budget could be quite extensive. So beware of that when planning. So set a budget is number 2, right? Also, a budget is also dependent on where you are in life. If you want to get married and you want to save money, then obviously a simple wedding is better. I notice a lot of people now get registered and just have a reception, or some people just have a very small wedding and no reception. Some people are doing that. So bear that in mind. You can't always please everyone around you. And I don't understand why people do that. They have to please everyone around them besides themselves. So cut the guest list. Best way to save money, and take ownership of how you control what you want at your wedding day, right? Remember, it's you and your partner's wedding day. It's all about what you guys want. And if you want to be independent, maybe save money towards your own wedding. My wife and I save money during a year towards our wedding day. We put a fund together, and every month we were putting money in it. And as we could afford, we started paying different vendors off because we were paying in different currencies. So we had to make sure our rand currency was applicable to that land's currency. But the budget is important, right? So now that I told you research is number 1, do research on all the items. Number 2, set a budget. Number 3, shop around for a good venue. Now, when it comes to a venue, a lot of people are stuck with the venues they know. But there's lots of venues that are pretty okay, and they can be spruced up depending on your taste and what you put in there. So venues that people think about that are normal, try and do outdoor venues. There's many outdoor venues all over the world where you can have amazing weddings. I mean, I actually got married on a cliff in the edge of Bali, and it was an amazing resort. So we wanted something different. So yet again, you got to go and shop around and see what venues matter to you and your partner. And venues can actually be tricky because some venues who are more popular for weddings, they'll have a set price. And venues that are not so popular but can deliver the same thing would be much more affordable. So do research as to what venue you and your partner would like. And also bear in mind that in the times we are in, the venue is a big part of what your pictures and your video would look like. So if your venue is not really awesome, your pictures are not going to look awesome either. But that comes to my next point, which is point number 4, and that is decor. A decor can make or break your wedding. It can. I would never go for a cheap decor specialist, purely because cheap decor will be visible when people look at your wedding video. And when people look at your pictures, they will see that decor. So don't cut corners when it comes to decor. I think that's the one thing I would tell you. Don't ever cut corners. Now, guys, I'm giving you free advice because no one's telling me what to say here. I'm giving you advice based on what I know. And I'm here to share this with you so you can find this useful. So when you're shopping for decor specialists, some of the best ones are not cheap. They're not. And it's up to you whether you want that good decor or not. I highly suggest go for somebody who can give you something magical. So shop around for good decor, right? So number 1, venue. Number 2, decor. In order of the topics, we've done 4 topics: research, budget, 3, venue, 4, decor. The next point, which is very important to me, is getting a good videographer and getting a good photographer. Those 2 elements are the only 2 people that can recapture the entire day for you. And I'll never forget when we set our wedding day, the videographer was very pricey, And I always wondered why. And the day we got married, I saw drones flying around. I saw things flying around. I saw a camera crew running around. And then I realized, okay, now I understand why this was pricey, because they've got some world-class tech here. There's about like 5, 6 different cameramen running around. It felt like a movie, you know? So I understood then. And when I looked at the video, it was good. So I felt it was well worth it. So the videographer and photographer are very important, and do not cut corners with that. And the last part that people cut corners in is something that I'm involved in, and that is the MC. People find I've got the last bit of money, and I'm going to allocate that to a cheap MC. Now, let me share this with you. An MC can make or break your wedding, because the MC is the program director of your formalities. And if you find a family member, that's okay. If you find somebody who does it cheap, that's okay. But if you get somebody who's a bit more experienced MCs are not cheap. And a lot of people are not educated on that. They feel like, no, it's a couple of $100,000, couple grand, maybe it's that. No, educate yourself. If you want somebody profound at your wedding, go look for someone like that, and understand a good MC is not going to be cheap. It's your wedding day. Why cut corners on an MC? When you look back at your wedding day, if the MC was making mistakes, who do you blame? You chose the MC. So do research on a good MC. And there's a difference between a cheap MC and a qualified MC, because people who do MCing of wedding every weekend, they're a little bit more experienced. And remember one thing, if you are going to cut corners on an MC, it can hurt you, especially if the person doesn't follow plan of what you want at your wedding day. So those were just 6 points that I've given you. I'm not here to pinpoint what is important to you, what is not important to you. When I look back at tips for weddings, I always give people these 6 tips. Number 1, do your research on what is important to you. Then you set number 2, your budget. 3, the venue. 4, the decor. 5, video photography. And 6, getting yourself a good MC. These things can be flexible. And remember, your wedding day is built on you and your partner talking a lot about what matters to you. It's a fun experience. And make sure that if ever you are not financially ready to get married, don't put yourself in debt by getting married. Do it when you are financially ready and set to take this challenge on. It's the most important day of your life with you and your partner, getting married. And you want to make sure it is magical, it is memorable, and it's something that everybody who's there could say, wow, what a wedding. And remember, if you want to really cut corners and save money at your wedding, cut down your guest list. Your guest list is the one place where you can save a whole lot of money. But take ownership of your wedding. It's your wedding day. Think about it. Talk to your partner, what is important, and fit all the things that matter to you on that list. Create a list, right? And save money towards it. I hope this podcast was useful to you. I felt that it needed to be shared, and I hope that we all can take away something from it. Tips on planning a wedding, episode 3 of the D-Word podcast. Leave your comments and shares on what you think was useful for you in this podcast. Thanks for checking it out. Until next time, take care.